This is Rick Prokop at Piano Power Lessons. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to look at the second section, which I like to refer to as the refrain that occurs 3 times in the song or in the waltz. And the refrain is always in direct contrast to what precedes it. It's kind of like an escape valve, wherein Chopin is saying, okay, let loose a little bit now, have some fun, have a lot more fun over here than you did over here. This is much more contemplative, it's a little slower. It's fun to play, but not as fun as this. And it's fun because it's a very catchy melody. And Chopin realizes that and really hooks you with it. So you hear it again here. As he comes up here, he goes, and you hear it again, right? All right, so that's 2 times just in this space. And then another 2 times. So that's 4 times. Then there's the slow section. And you have another 4 times. So now you've heard it 8 times. And now you come back, and this is a repeat of the first 2 pages. So you have another 4 times. So you've heard this 12 times by the end of the piece. And before we go any further, let's take a look at the chords that Chopin uses throughout this section. So in the first bar, we have G sharp 7th, which is the 5 chord of C sharp minor. Right? And then we go to the 1 chord. So this is the chord he's outlining, which I'll show you after we're done with this. C sharp minor is next. And with the bass, we have the G sharp 7th, and then the C sharp. Next is G sharp 7th again, with the root in the bass, followed by A major, which is the 6th chord in the key of C sharp minor. And next is our old friend, the 2 chord, D sharp minor 7th flat 5, and this is the voicing he has. He has the 3rd in the bass. Here's the root in the bass, but he has the 3rd in the bass. And then next measure we have C sharp minor in 2nd inversion because the 5th's in the bass, right? And that's setting up the G sharp 7th, which follows, and with the G sharp in the bass. Okay? And then we cadence at C sharp minor by going up this little, say the G sharp there, the C sharp, and the E of C sharp minor. Then we have the same thing all over again, the G sharp 7th, the C sharp minor, G sharp 7th with the root in the bass, the A major, 6th chord, right? It's the 6th step of the scale, of the C sharp minor scale. And then we have something very new here. This is D major, and in a little while I'm going to show you how that can relate to C sharp minor. And then we have G sharp 7th, again the 5 chord, and you're out with the 1 chord. So let's see how this sounds now with the addition of the D major triad there. So we have the G sharp 7th, and followed by C sharp minor, and then G sharp 7th, followed by A, and now we have, there's D major. Now the F sharp's in the bass, okay? Same as up here with the 2 chord, Okay, you had the F sharp and the bass. The only difference between the chord I'm playing here, I'm playing a D, F sharp, A, C sharp, a D major seventh. The only difference between that chord and this one is what I'm playing with my thumb. The D, up here it would be, if I did it in a root position, it would be D sharp, F sharp, A, C sharp, okay? Down here, I just lower my thumb to a D, and I see the difference? And from this point on, you have two measures of that basically sitting in your head, and then finally the G sharp seventh and the C sharp minor. So let's look down at the piano and I'll show you the structures on the keyboard that you can fool around with. Okay, the first chord he's playing around, right? And you can do that with 1, 2, 3, and 4 on G sharp, D sharp, F sharp, and G sharp. That's your G sharp seventh and the B sharps in the bass. So it's first inversion. And then your next chord would be C sharp minor, a full C sharp, G sharp, C sharp, E, and G sharp. 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay, and the next one is a different position of G sharp seventh. So you have this now. Okay, so we have the F sharp, the seventh, the third, the fifth, and the seventh again. And that's this one. Okay. Okay, and then we go to A major. So you have E, here's A, C sharp, and E, okay, and that's this one. All right, now we go down to the 2 chord. So we have the F sharp in the bass now. I'm playing an octave down here. We have the root, the third, the F sharp is down here, so I'm leaving that out. He leaves it out. So we have D sharp, A, C sharp, and the D sharp. And that figure is, is that. And then it goes to just a C sharp minor, but you're only playing roots and fifths here. And you have this. And you're going to go to your, eventually, to your 4th finger here. And then now we're on the 2nd line with this. This is the 1st chord of the 2nd line. And then we go to a G sharp 7th. And again, he just uses roots and fifths for that. And then, and he fills in the rest of the chord with the tritone of the chord down here in the left hand. Okay, so we have, and then he finishes on C sharp minor, see? I'm sorry, he goes. All right, so he's outlining, he's playing around these 3 notes of C sharp minor at that point. All right, and then we're back to here. So it would be a good thing for you to just practice playing these structures because that's what the melody is based on. And try to use the fingerings that you're ultimately going to use. So use a 4 on top here, and then 5 on top, and then 5 on top, 5 on top again, and then for this one, 1, 2, 4, and then 1, 2, 4 again, and then you just have that figure. All right, the second time around he comes down, And then that's your chord now. And then G sharp seventh. And finally C sharp minor. All right, let's discuss the two ways that we can practice this, especially the right hand. The left hand's no big deal. It's usually the right hand that's doing all of the busy work. And, you know, you look throughout the piano literature, other than Bach, other than contrapuntal music, and the right hand is always doing 2, 3, 4 times more than the left hand is doing. And the left hand is just sitting there playing an octave while the right hand's going through all of these gymnastics. So it's kind of the case with this. So what you want to do on the most elementary level is to play each note. You take the fastest note in the piece, which is an eighth note, and set the metronome for each one of these notes. For example, I have the metronome on 92, and what I'm going to do is bounce on each of these notes. I'm going to play from my wrist and just let the fingers follow. And it'll sound like this. Drop, 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 drop. I'm dropping my wrist on each one. And as you do this, you'll discover that some fingers don't feel that good doing this, that it's difficult, and it's always going to be the same fingers. And you just go through the whole thing. The slower the better. And what you're trying to do is just bounce with your wrist and lift your fingers. And then when that's over, you just, you know, if you feel comfortable doing that, you progressively up the speed. So that was at 90, what was that? 96, I think, and it's hard to read. But say we go up to like 116 now, so we have, and I'm still trying to just bounce, 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 just bouncing on each note. Okay? And you shouldn't always be trying to play this fast. You're going to learn to play these notes by playing them very, very slowly. So the most difficult thing to do is to put it down on around 60 and have the patience to just play at this speed. And what you're trying to do is, as you're coming down, the fingers are lifting. See? And that's really difficult to do. And when you think about it, when you're playing really quickly, how often is this thumb playing? It's going. It's not playing fast, but at that particular moment in time in the piece, that finger has to deliver without you feeling any stress at all. Otherwise, you're going to be stopped there. And that goes for all of your fingers. If you're playing the fourth finger, for example, you're just going da 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 bop 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 bop, right? That's not hard. But what's hard is, within the context of all this, to play them exactly at the right moment without feeling any stress. Another really important thing to do is write in your fingerings. Just always put a number above the note as a reference. And you notice that 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 happens again and again. That's the easy thing about playing this piece, is that, for a lot of the figures here, you're using the same fingerings. So I'll leave this up for you, and you can copy down those fingerings. And then there it is, nice and clear. And then this area right here is the same as up here. You just recopy what you have up there. And when you get down to this scale here, here's the fingering that you should use. It's very comfortable and works really well. So copy those down. All right, before we go, let's have a look at these last 4 measures of the section. And Chopin, as I noted before, uses a D major chord here instead of the standard 2 chord, which is a D sharp minor 7th flat 5. And I had mentioned that he uses an A major scale going up to this point. And there was just one small deviation from the A scale, in that he put a G natural in here, and he had a little bit of chromaticism right there in the middle of the scale. But I wouldn't be surprised if he had tried a straight A major scale all the way up. And let me play you that, and you see what I'm talking about. In other words, going up to an E here. So if he didn't add an extra note here, he would have gone up to an E here, and then he'd have to back down to the D sharp here. So let me play you the whole thing if it were written that way. And it really doesn't sound bad. But he obviously didn't want to break in the line here and wanted it to continually go up. So that's the reason for that additional G natural in the A scale. Now we come back to the question, well, why an A major scale here? Why does that work? So once again, look at the progression. We have a flat 2 chord, 5, 7, 1 in a minor key. So let's go down to the keyboard and do the same thing in E minor. So instead of a C sharp minor, we'd have an E minor there. For the flat 2, we'd have an F major, then a B 7th, and then an E minor. So using that same progression in E minor, I'd have F, which is a half step above E, right? Major triad, and then 5 chord, B 7th, and E minor. And if I play Chopin's melody with the little change that I made in it, in the key of E minor, it would be this. And I hope that you saw that this was just a C scale. All the way up to there. And then we had the chromaticism that followed. Well, although it looks like the C scale because it's all white keys, in terms of E minor, it's really something else. And you hear this progression in Spanish music. And that music is characterized by this half step right at the outset of the scale. Okay, so what Chopin's doing is he's using what's called the Phrygian mode. That's the Spanish sounding mode. He's using that just for that one chord because of this relationship. Because that scale sounds great with that chord. But the E Phrygian scale is just the C scale starting on E, isn't it? It's all white keys just starting on E. So now if we go back to the waltz in C sharp minor, we have this relationship between a D major, which is a half step above C sharp minor, okay? Just like F was a half step above E minor. So now what scale do we play in this kind of a situation? And that sounds really great. So did you notice that it looked like I was playing an A scale? But what is this A major scale in terms of C sharp? If we start on a C sharp playing an A major scale, it's C sharp Phrygian. So getting back to these two measures, what seems to be an A major scale sounds great over this D in the key of C sharp minor because it's really a C sharp Phrygian scale starting on A. And that should do it for today. In the next lesson, we're going to discuss the use of physical groups in playing through this piece, which will allow us to play through it at faster speeds and be comfortable all the way through. So I look forward to seeing you at the next lesson. Have a great day.